The Apostle Paul talks about God having put government in place. We need to recognise that he says in Romans that the rulers that are in place are put there by the sovereignty of God, and they serve God's purposes of limiting wickedness. So Paul sees a good and positive benefit for government. And it's worth remembering that Paul was speaking about the government of the Roman Empire, which was not Christian, which was pagan, which in many ways was sort of at least hostile towards Christianity or suspicious of it. But yet that was the kind of government that Paul was saying that Christians ought to honour and respect, and they ought to obey. So Paul says that that government is put in place by God, and he called Christians to submit to the authority of that government. What that meant, for example, was that they were to pay their taxes rather than avoiding paying their taxes, to give respect and honour to those who were rulers. But it's also clear that that obligation to submit and obey is not absolute. So if there is a conflict between what the government is demanding and what the Bible says and what Jesus commands, then Christians have the right to disobey the state, but they should expect to pay the penalty for doing that. So again, in the Roman Empire, Christians were pressured to want to worship the emperor and acknowledge him as Lord. And Christians, of course, can't do that because Jesus is the only Lord. And therefore, when they choose not to obey, but to obey Jesus instead, they found that they were persecuted and they suffered. The other really important thing that Paul says in relation to government is in 1 Timothy chapter 2, where he urges Christians to pray for those who are ruling over them. And it seems that Paul has two big concerns in praying for government. He prays for government so that there would be civic peace. One of the key roles of government is to prevent civil war and fighting, to ensure that we live in a peaceful society. And then secondly, for government to allow freedom for the gospel to be lived and proclaimed. So he said that we should pray for government so that we would be able to live quiet lives. And essentially what that means is to be able to get on with the work of the gospel. And his reason for doing that is because Jesus is the one mediator between man and God. And it's God's purpose that everybody should hear the good news about Jesus and have opportunity to turn to him.